Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we've got some serious business to attend to today. We're going to, of course, take a look at our mind map to get our bearings straight. And here we have three segments that we're going to get into. We've got a couple of quick updates on the Trump Special Master saga. We've been following this for some time. I was sort of expecting a little bit more activity today out of the court docket, but not a ton. But I still want to make sure we're keeping close attention to this because the Special Master is issuing some new orders. Number one, a protective order, right? So while the Special Master is divvying out all of these individuals to come and rummage through all of Trump's boxes, there's got to be some protections in place, right? We can't have these leaks going out from the DOJ over to the Washington Post or to the New York Times or anything like that, right? So there is a protective order the judge went through. This is Judge Raymond Dearie who authored this one, and we'll take a look at it because there's some interesting stuff to glean out of it. And he also was responding to a government request. The U.S. government prosecutors, they wanted an extension. They said, Judge, we need a little bit more time on this thing. Can we modify the case management plan so that we can sort of push those deadlines back and make some modifications? Because they got to go hire, remember, that third-party vendor to go rummage through all the 11,000 documents that they said are problematic. And so they need some more time. So we'll take a look at both of those things before we talk some more Trump news, because Trump, as we know, was out there giving rallies. We covered some of that in our morning walk and talks for members. But Hillary Clinton was commenting on one of those rallies, and she said, hey, I grew up when Hitler was being studied or something, and I noticed that there seemed to be some similarities between Trump and Adolf. And so we go from a basket of deplorables to rallies full of Nazis real quick in this country, 2016 to 2022. Hillary Clinton is calling all the Trumpers literal Nazis. I mean, she's not saying you are literally Nazis, but she's saying, the Trump rally sure looks a lot like Nazi rallies. And we'll listen to her. We've also got a couple of clips. Liz Cheney was over there in Texas. I don't know why the Texas Tribune was talking to her, but they were. And she said, if Donald Trump is a nominee of the Republican Party, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I don't want to be a Republican anymore. And basically nobody in the Republican Party made a peep about that. Nobody cares. First of all, she's already basically gone. Oh, cool. We'll save it for the segment. But we're going to get into her. She also wants Kari Lake to be eviscerated, saying that she's going to make sure and do everything she can to stop Kari Lake because, of course, remember, this was never only about Donald Trump, obviously, right? If you ever thought this was like, oh, Donald Trump just had a bad day on January 6th and he's the only problem and the Democrats are going to be happy when they take him out. Obviously, that's not the case, right? They're not going to stop with him. And so Liz Cheney is now saying Kari Lake also has to go. And, we're going to see the big laundry list start if they do happen to succeed in their attempts to remove Trump. So we've got that very interesting clip of Representative Jamie Raskin, Slippery Jamie here. And he is very upset about Ray Epps, or at least a question about Ray Epps. Thomas Massey asked him a question about it. And Raskin does what we call in the law pounding the table, pounding the table, screaming in a big monotonous, tirade because you got nothing else to say. We'll talk a little bit more about that lesson. If you've got good law, pound the law. If you've got good facts, pound the facts. If you don't have either of them, you just pound the table, scream like a lunatic from Congress. That's what Jamie Raskin did. And he's also talking about phone calls and, there's some interesting narratives that they're trying to shove down everybody's gullet now that it's election season. So we've got a couple slippery Jamie Raskin clips to get into. Then in our next segment, we're going to talk about this Republican so-called commitment to America. From this guy McCarthy. We'll see how this one goes. But he's going to make a new commitment to America. And we've been waiting for a long time on this channel for some sort of semblance of life out of the Republican Party. We know Cocaine Mitch has been delirious, delusional. I don't know where he's been really, but not much from him. Now we're going to check in with McCarthy to see if he's got some remedy because he wrote a commitment to America, a nice plan. And that sounds really nice. I love commitments from politicians if they keep them. And I know that McCarthy's given us several different commitments before, and so we'll see what he's got. He does have some interesting things that I do like repealing 87,000 IRS agents. That's a pretty, I can get behind that one. But Joe Biden was responding to this. We've got Karine Jean Pierre responding to some of this, saying, that the Biden people are doing a whole lot of very important things on one part of what McCarthy's talking about, crime. Crime wave sweeping all across America. And KJP was out representing the White House saying, no, this is historic. This president's historic. Everything's historic. I'm historic. And you're not, Peter. So just sit down and let the historic people talk. We have an appearance from Jen Psaki today. Shout out to Zulu in the chat. But she'll be here for a very short, brief appearance. And it's going to be a good one because it's old Psaki versus KJP. We're going to have to see that. Doocey is pitting former press secretary against current press secretary and saying, hey, Karine, your friend Jen Psaki says that your administration's filled with a bunch of losers. What do you say about that? So, of course, we can't let that one go without any attention. Ultra Maga says Zulu's not even here. Well, that's all right. Well, we're doing Jen Psaki anyways. All right. And so you can see there's also a fun clip. Since we're in Congress, we have to jump over and check out what's happening with Nancy Pelosi. She was over there in New York City and she got booed on the stage. And these people are just so, delusional. They sort of, they don't even know what's happening when they go out there in front of the world. So we'll get into that. And then lastly, sort of the big news of the day, jumping into the Eurozone, we've got Giorgia Maloni out of Italy wins, rattles the entire EU. They're all a little bit panicky about that. And a lot of people in the media here are a little bit panicky about that as well. We've got, of course, a montage, a compilation of all of the neo-fascist clips. And I was joking about this on our morning walk and talk today about, Benito Mussolini's back now. It used to be, we had a bunch of Adolf Hitler memes, but now we're moving over into another Axis power of World War II, Benito Mussolini, neo-fascist. So they're back in the house, the media having a hyperbolic meltdown as usual. We're going to actually listen to about a 2-minute portion of this speech. The last I checked, this speech had about 11 point something million views on Twitter, which was just, which is sort of a massive number. In fact, let's see where we're at right now. And it's just going up by, by the minute. Let's see here. Oh my gosh, 13.3 million. Look at this. If you haven't seen it, it's 2 minutes and 14 seconds. We'll watch it all, every minute of it. It's really quite good. And it's got 13.3 million views. I mean, and, numbers like that, it was like 11 million a couple hours ago. It was 9 million a couple hours before that. Very, very, very much interest, a lot of interest in this story. So we'll spend some time on it. And she references this quote from this guy, G.K. Chesteron, which we'll learn about. And you can see what a handsome gentleman over there. So we'll learn about him. References his quote. Very interesting quote. I didn't know anything about the guy, and so we'll learn a little bit more about him. We have a clip from Miss Maloni back in CPAC in English in 2022, which this year, February 2022. And the EU was very unhappy with her potential election. This clip from Ursula came out a couple days ago, and she was sort of speculating that if Maloni wins, there could be some pretty serious problems. And so if you want to be a part of the show, as you can see is what I meant to say, we've got a lot to get to. And if you want to be a part of the show, you look at all these different segments. We're going to fly through it today. But if you want to participate in the show, in the chat, be sure to check out watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an amazing chat over there, chatting away. Shout outs over to C. Reed in the house, Kelly Sell now, Uncle Shane's in the house, along with John McGarvey, B Specs over there, Savvy Sue's in the house. Shout outs to JC the Music Man, See the Veil, and many others. And we had our morning walk and talk today, which is carrying on the show, sort of carrying on the conversation after the show ends. You can get that also if you join over on YouTube. We've got a bunch of members in the house over there. Zulu's a member, Just Cause. We got K Beans over there. Just Cause is modding down the fort. But shout outs to Ultra Mega, and some of our members. You also get the gifts if you're over there as well. Of course, I am a lawyer, criminal defense lawyer in Scottsdale, Arizona. So if you know anybody who's visited the state of Arizona and been charged with a crime, we would love the opportunity to help. 480-787-0394. And before we jump into things, I want to share with you that if you decide that you want to be generous with a super chat today, or you want to donate something or to this program, I am going to be donating all super chats and all new members, sort of whatever, right? All of it's going to be, I'm going to be matching it and donating the proceeds over to this event, which is coming up on October 8th. Is it October 8th? Is that the thing? Well, I think it's October 8th, but if you go and check out the link in the description, I forget when the date is. I think it's October 8th. Hang on a second. Let me double check this while I'm here. It's for suicide, addiction, traumatic loss. Yes, this is the fundraiser. The October 8th Hope and Healing fundraiser brought to you by Eric's House. And so it's an amazing organization. My mom's a founder. I'm on the board. We help good people who have lost somebody due to tragic death, suicide, or overdose. And so we're going to be matching that. It's over at ericshouse.org, or check out the link in the description. I appreciate your support on that. All right. And so without any further ado, my friends, let's get this queued up and let's get into the meat and potatoes of the program on the day, shall we? The Donald Trump Special Master saga continues, with the Special Master Raymond J. Dearie issuing 2 new orders. We're going to go through those both today before we take a look at some reaction from some very, very animated anti-Trumpers, people like Hillary Clinton, who is now comparing Trump supporters to Nazis, along with Liz Cheney, saying that it's not only about Donald Trump, she's going to stop him, but also wants Kari Lake thrown out. We're going to check in with Jamie Raskin also on some Ray Epps sagas. But before we do, we've got to take a look at these 2 new entries that hit the docket that the Special Master is presiding over. You can see 2 things we're going to cover today: a protective order and a new case management plan, along with the government's request for what we call a continuance, an extension of time. And so let's take a look at these one by one, starting with the government's request. Government prosecutors submitted a 4-page letter over to the judge. You can see going over to Judge Raymond J. Dearie. He's out of the Eastern District of New York. This was submitted September 23rd, and you can see it's from the prosecutors because it says U.S. Department of Justice, National Security Division, so-called, out of the counterintelligence section. And you can see it's regarding Donald Trump suing the United States, and they're asking for a modification of the deadlines. Remember that we're at this stage in this case where the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, they came down and they said, sorry, Trump, the government's going to win on all of these issues. And so they don't want to give the special master those 100 confidential documents. They don't have to do it. And if they want to prosecute you for crimes, they can go ahead and do it. Trump lost both of those claims. And after this all went back down, now the special master is moving things around, moving the deadlines and adjusting the case management plan. And so the government said, all right, look, now that we know we don't have to give you those documents, here's what we're asking for. Prosecutors write, Dear Judge Dearie, the government respectfully moves to modify the case management plan, which we'll read next, with respect to the deadlines for vendor selection and contracting. Remember, those 11,000 documents, they don't want to run through it. They need somebody to scan it and organize it and catalog it all appropriately. So a vendor, they got to go find somebody. The government moves before the September 27th deadline for objections and motions to adopt or modify this, because deadlines are pending and we have the obligation to talk about it. It says the government suggests that the deadline for vendor selection and contracting be reset for Tuesday, September 27th. Oh, that's tomorrow. And although the plaintiff may be able to select a vendor by the deadline, plaintiff, they say Trump, is unlikely to be able to engage the vendor until Tuesday, September 27th. Now, they say collectively, both sides, the parties, so Trump's team and the government prosecutors, collectively, both sides have identified 6 vendors who have the capability to securely scan, process, host, provide access to the seized materials on the Relativity platform. Each party can have its private workspace to review and code documents. 5 vendors were provided by the government to plaintiff, by the government to the plaintiff, and plaintiff identified an additional vendor. So that means Trump's team, they found somebody else. The government came and they said, hey, we've got these 5 people who can rummage through your stuff for you. Do you have anybody else that you'd like to rummage through this? Trump said, yeah, actually I do. So an additional vendor went over and the government said, oh yeah, we like that person. The government also facilitated Trump's discussions with vendors by providing names of the vendor representatives and the contact information, as well as a draft statement of work and all of those things. As of the close of business on Thursday, plaintiff informed the government that one vendor expressed an interest in bidding, one did not, and 4 have not yet responded. All right, so looks like we've got one who's sort of interested. We'll maybe take that job. One said, no, not going to do it. And the other 4 like, shoot, what should we do with this? This is the Trump file. Do we want to do the Trump file? We all know what happens to people who get involved in the Trump file. Even if one interested vendor commits to the required schedule by the close of business on Friday, that was last week, it's unlikely that a contract is going to be entered. And so, Judge, we need more time. The government's deadline to produce these copies of the seized materials also follows the deadline. They say, Judge, as we told you back on Tuesday, the government remains prepared to provide the seized materials, not including the documents with the classification markings. They say we won that one. So obviously, we're not going to give those over there. But they say that we think that we can give them within 1 day's notice in the Washington, D.C. metro area. But as the government noted in its pre-conference letter, the seized materials can be provided only after the vendor is selected, right? So they got to, in other words, they can't give this third-party provider any effort, any materials until it's actually set in stone, until there's actually a contract. So the government filed its proposed order in a timely fashion after the conference. They say Trump did not submit its proposed order until September. However, the district court has not entered any order. And so to allow the vendor to sign off, we're asking you to move these dates. Right? So it's kind of just some technical stuff getting moved around, but you can see how the mechanics of this work. Lastly, they say, the prosecutors suggest that the special master revise the second paragraph on page 3 of your order to clarify how this process goes. And remember, we're talking about a lot of spreadsheets here. See this electronic spreadsheet. The government was supposed to make a spreadsheet of say, hey, this is what we seized. This is what item number 1 is. Item 1 is this. Item 2 is that. Send that all over to the Trump team. Trump says, oh, well, item 1, we agree that this is what you say it is. Or we disagree, this is what you say it is. And then they have problems with the list. They say, well, you gave us an incomplete list, right? There's other things we think you took that are not on the list that you said you took. So it's a big sort of process. And the prosecutors are saying, we should probably modify this a little bit. They say, Judge, how about we just make these changes? And you can see you got strike throughs and you've got added text in red, sort of just like a track changes in a Word document. It says no later than September 30th. They say the government shall make available all special copies seized, except the materials that they've already reviewed. See, so they're adding in sort of some caveats. Also saying that the Bates number should be correlated and explaining what the Bates and the filter Bates numbers are and what the filter team should do. So they say, although the government prosecutors continue to review the case management plan, currently we see no issues with any other deadlines, and we don't believe that modest revisions are going to have any effect on the remaining deadlines. They say, we shared an earlier draft of this with Trump's team, and Trump's counsel authorized us to say that Trump agrees with the requested extensions and the deadlines. Trump did not see the proposed clarifications on the second paragraph on page 3, and thus we do not know plaintiff's position. Oh, well, that's kind of an important thing there. 1. That's ridiculous. Okay, so he's sort of mashing 2 issues into the same thing. All right, so, okay, I mean, that's one way to do it, I guess. Saying that Trump agrees with half of this letter, but Trump doesn't agree with the other. We don't know what his position is as to the other half of the letter with regards to modifying the prior order that the special master entered. So, the reason I laugh is just kind of funny. We shared an earlier draft of this letter, but they didn't share the current draft. So they shared a draft that doesn't include something that they may know that they may disagree with. And then they added in that second paragraph in a second draft. And they say on the first draft, Trump's people agreed with the requested extensions because they read it. But then we added a bunch of paragraphs to this, and then we didn't send it over to them. And so we don't know their position, which is just like, well, why didn't you just send over the full thing before you got his position on it? Why did you send over a rough draft that has half the document missing? And it's a pretty big point because you're asking for the modification of the order. All right. So, whatever. I guess that's how they do. But that is their request for the extension. The prosecutors say we need more time to get some of these mechanics ironed out. And that alone is not a big deal, right? It does make sense that all of this is sort of happening very quickly. The 11th Circuit came down and made some changes that impact all of this. And so they're now responding accordingly. Judge Raymond Dearie issued the amended case management plan, granting the government's request to modify the case, saying that pursuant to the special master order, we are now modifying this. He says no later than September 26, a government official with sufficient knowledge shall submit a declaration, and that is today. So we'll see if that had happened. No later than September 30th, Trump shall submit a declaration to each of the following matters, right? And so this was what we had already talked about. We had already gone through most of this, but just as a quick reminder, by certain deadlines, Special Master Raymond Dearie is asking for Trump and his team to do certain things. One, say that if anything was missing, you got to let us know. Stuff was not seized or was seized, you let us know. If anything is incorrect about where the property that was seized was found, you got to let us know, right? If the FBI came in and they say, we took Melania's underwear in the closet, and you say, no, her underwear was in the laundry room and you took it out of there. Well, Trump and his people have to clarify that. We've got more deadlines. October 14th, the government is submitting a declaration, an affidavit, saying that they are up to speed, right? Everything is done, and sort of the judge wants final lists so they can sort of move forward with the analysis. So all the deadlines got moved. This is really the key point here. The plaintiff is to serve designations on the government. This is what Trump has to do. Okay, filter materials by 9/26, 10/7, 10/14, 10/21. 10/3 is when they submit a log of the disputes, and then 10/14, 10/21, October 28th. Now, we are getting awfully close to the midterm elections if you take a look at those deadlines, and that seems to mean that we're not going to get it all completed by the time the midterms come through, right? It's going to be sort of done, but the rulings and everything will be coming shortly thereafter. The next status conference in this matter, according to Judge Raymond Dearie, is scheduled for October 6th. Dial in information at that time. And remember, the last time that Raymond Dearie issued orders and had a preliminary conference or a status conference, he actually required them to be there in person, I believe. He made it in person, but now they're just calling in. So something we can continue to follow. We can see that a lot of these are just going to be deadlines that are document deadlines, essentially. Trump has to send his spreadsheet over to the other side, and the spreadsheet has to review it and then make any objections, and it's back and forth and around we go. But that is the new case management plan from Judge Raymond Dearie. We also have Judge Dearie issuing a new protective order, 5 pages, and this is to guide the information and really to prevent the disclosure of any information about Donald Trump and the rummaging through the documents that were seized after the raid at Mar-a-Lago. You can see Donald Trump versus United States of America. It's out of the West Palm Beach Division out of the Southern District of Florida. They tell us from Judge Raymond J. Dearie, he says, the court's order appointing a special master requires that the government provide copies of the materials to everybody who's involved, right? The government, DOJ, is in possession of these boxes. They took them all out. They said, oh my goodness, there are some letters in here between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. And if anybody sees these letters, America is going to be over. It's basically one step worse than the podium guy. Remember, he took the podium and America almost melted down because he had the ring of power. And in this case, if one of those letters had been seized by somebody, America would have been ended. But now that they have been retained by the DOJ safely and there's no leaks happening or anything, what we now know is that what can we do with these documents, right? There's a lot of them. And they said that they were the end of the world if anybody saw them, but now there's 11,000 of them, and now we have to communicate them back and forth. In fact, one person who has to get them is the special master, seen here, along with Trump's counsel, also has to get the documents. Also, certain agents and employees. And they're all a part of a criminal investigation, most of whose details are not a matter of public record. And so we got to be pretty careful with these documents. They were very unsecure out there in Mar-a-Lago, but now they are perfectly, I guess, going to be safer now, I guess. In addition, the court requires the parties to prepare logs based on and derived from the seized materials that should similarly be protected from public disclosure and facilitate the special master review process. And to preserve the confidentiality of the non-public information, they say the court enters this protective order. Right? So this is sort of like a force field to stop a lot of the documents from spiraling out of the investigation, to keep it all nice and tidy. The seized materials produced by the government are confidential, and the judge is saying nobody else should see them other than the special master, his staff, Trump and his lawyers, counsel of record. They say that the special master can approve certain people to scan and host and review the documents. Trump is ordered to provide the special master with the names and job titles of any staff who the plaintiff's lawyers, meaning Trump's lawyers, want to review and send that back over to the special master. So if Trump has a list of people that he says, well, this person, I need this person to look at it, and this person, he's got to disclose all of that. Vendors who are engaged to scan, host, and provide review or otherwise acknowledge the documents also must execute this, right? Everybody's signing on to this. It's basically a non-disclosure type of protective order. Limitations on use, they say Trump, his lawyer, any vendors, anybody involved in this case only can use this stuff exclusively in connection with this case and not anything else. You are prohibited from referring this to anything else unless the special master authorizes it. Trump and his lawyers, they may maintain any seized materials that have been produced in a manner reasonably intended to preserve and maintain their confidentiality. Right? And you see this language, right, in a manner reasonably intended to preserve and maintain. A lot of wiggle room on that. But, reasonableness is what we call an objective standard in the law. It's sort of an objectively reasonable person in a certain time, place, location should act a certain way. And he's giving them some discretion to do that. Specifically, they say Trump's counsel, the members, secure areas, secure networks, if stored electronically, shall be password protected, network, and secured, and so on. If there is unauthorized disclosure in any way, the disclosing party must immediately notify everybody. So if something leaks, got to tell somebody, notify everybody, retrieve all the copies, and make acknowledgement known. A violation of this protective order, so if there's any more leaks, if any of this stuff goes out to the Washington Post or the New York Times or any of the other media entities, it shall be punishable by contempt of court or any other legally available sanction that the court deems appropriate. All parties to whom seized materials are disclosed in accordance with this judicial order consent to this court's jurisdiction. Done and ordered, Brooklyn, New York, signed by Judge Raymond J. Dearie. He's out of the Eastern District, and he's appointed as the special master presiding over the Trump raid case. So, limitations on what can be done with these documents. We'll see if there is any real limitation on the leaks that we've been covering here. But those are emanating from the DOJ. And is the special master going to hold them accountable if they leak damaging information to Donald Trump in the months leading up to an election? Days, weeks leading up to an election? We'll have to see. Now, there's a lot of other people out there who are unhappy with Trump. While the DOJ is prosecuting the president, not officially, but more or less prosecuting him, Hillary Clinton is comparing Trump supporters to Nazis. She joined the Texas Tribune there for an interview, and she was spiraling off here for several minutes. And in one of these stories, she talks about when she was a younger person, my goodness, she studied Hitler when she was in school. And she used to notice that there were people with their arms raised up listening to his speeches. And when she is now preparing for maybe another presidential run, she's also monitoring Trump. She's noticing some interesting things happening there at his rallies. And one of the interesting things she says that is happening is throngs of young men who are appearing to remind her of Adolf.
I remember as a young student, trying to figure out how did people get basically drawn in by Hitler? How did that happen? And I'd watch newsreels and I'd see this guy standing up there ranting and raving and people shouting and raising their arms. I thought, what's happened to these people? Why did they believe that? You saw the rally in Ohio the other night. Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour.
A
and you have
speech.
these rows of young men with their arms raised. I thought, what is going on? So there is
rows of men with their arms raised, just like those Nazis raised their hands in Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. And Trump was ranting and raving just like him too. And apparently people don't raise their hands at Hillary Clinton rallies or in any other events with young men around the world. But the TDS is acting up pretty heavily here with Hillary. And a big part of me wonders, is she running for president again? Why is she out here trying to make all of this talk with these different individuals, trying to rehabilitate some of the image? And a big part of Hillary's original stick that didn't work out for her so well was when she said that the MAGA Republicans, to use a new phrase back then, she said they all belonged in a basket of deplorables. And now she's saying that apparently all the MAGA Republicans are literal Nazis. So that happened very quickly, from a basket of deplorables, rallies of Nazis in just a couple short years. That's Hillary Clinton. And she may be running again. She's got a show with Chelsea, and they're out there trying to make America think that people like them. We'll see how it works out for them. Liz Cheney, also very unhappy with Donald Trump, wants to see him eliminated, and so upset about this, she says, you know what? I am technically a Republican, so-called. I just got blown out in my election in Wyoming. I'm not going to be an elected Republican anymore, but I am a Republican. And she was also at the Texas Tribune, and Liz Cheney gets asked, hey, Liz, what happens if Donald Trump is the nominee? I mean, you know, he is a Republican, and you say you're a Republican, and even though you just lost your election and you're going to be thrown out of your butt in a couple months, if you are a Republican and Trump, who says he's a Republican, decides to run, are you going to be supporting him? Yes or no?
So I'm going to ask you, will you remain a Republican, regardless of what happens in the next election?
I'm going to make sure Donald Trump, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he's not the nominee. And if he is the nominee, I won't be a Republican.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Clapping like seals there. Wow, that's great, Liz. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Nobody thinks you're a Republican anyways. It's you and Adam Kinzinger, and neither of you are going to be in Congress as soon as the balance of power changes. Soon as the tides turn there in January, adios, Liz. So that's fine. Nobody wants her to be a Republican. She doesn't want to be a Republican anyways. Good riddance, adios. Liz Cheney also, though, unhappy with anybody who even resembles Donald Trump. Remember, this was never only about Donald. They don't like anybody who even looks like Donald, sounds like Donald, believes anything that Trump believes in, or has any of the same issues in their minds as the MAGA Republicans. If you are even close, you got to go. Here's Liz Cheney saying that Kari Lake also, who is not Donald Trump, very surprisingly, it's not the same person, but she also is a Republican, and Liz Cheney wants her gone too.
I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that Kari Lake is not elected.
That's another Republican. But that's not Donald Trump.
Does that include campaigning for Democrats if that's what it takes?
Yes.
It does.
Yes, it does. So they're all chanting away for her. Hey, she doesn't have any power, guys. She's not even in office anymore. She currently is in office, but she's going to be thrown out soon. So you better get campaigning here pretty soon, because you're going to be a lady without a home soon enough. Ranting about Kari Lake. Kari Lake is not Donald Trump. Kari Lake believes in a lot of issues that Donald Trump believes in. And so it's just more evidence that this is not about Donald Trump. Never was. It was always about consolidating power. It was always about Liz Cheney being a thorn in the Republican side. Always about extending it from Trump to Trump's deputies, Trump's allies like Bannon and Navarro, and then out to any of the J6ers, the violent ones, and then the non-violent ones, and then the ones who were in the Capitol, and the ones who were outside the Capitol except Ray Epps, and then everybody else who was even text messaging. And now you've got Sean Hannity, who got his text messages. And now you've got Ginny Thomas, and the wife of Justice Thomas, who's in the Supreme Court. All extending out. And that was only the Trump bubble. Now that's done. We're done with the Trump bubble. It's going to the Kari Lake bubble. It's going to the Ron DeSantis bubble. All of them has to be stopped because it's about power and politics. It's not about anything else other than their continued vanity and power. Kari Lake responds to Liz Cheney saying that she's going to go out there and campaign against her. Does anybody care? Nobody from Arizona cares. But Kari Lake says, you know, I think I'm going to be just fine.
I want to point out what Liz Cheney has said about you when speaking at this Texas Tribune conference yesterday. She says, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure Kari Lake is not elected. Your reaction?
That might be the biggest, best gift I've ever received. I mean, the people of Wyoming can't stand her. I'm pretty much sure that the people of Arizona don't like Liz Cheney.
Fact check,
true.
True.
Here's the deal, Maria. The Republican Party, the new Republican Party, is the party of we the people. It is no longer the party of warmongers. And so Liz Cheney probably should change her voter registration. Turns out she really is a Democrat after all.
Do it. Do it right now, Liz. You don't have to wait until Trump's the nominee. You don't want Kari in there. You don't like anything else the Republican Party's doing. Have a lot of problems with everybody else who is not like you. So just do it. Nobody needs you to wait around until 2024. Just put pen to paper, Liz. We all know it's true. Liz Cheney saying Kari Lake needs to be stopped, and that's just the very beginning. Meanwhile, we've got Representative Jamie Raskin, who is ranting and raving from the floor in Congress. He gets asked a question about Ray Epps. And, you know, in the law, we talk about a couple strategies here from time to time. One of them is called pounding the table. And in law, when you've got very good law in front of you, if you have a case that comes through your door and you go, man, this law is really on my side. It's really going to help this issue and this client. You pound the law. That's what they teach you. If the law's not on your side, but maybe the facts are great, right? The law says that you're probably going to lose this, but your client is somebody who is, a retired senior citizen who volunteers and rescues little puppies 6 days a week. So you pound those facts, pound, because the law is not on your side. And if you don't have the law and you don't have the facts, all you do is pound the table and you just scream about everything. And you just make a big show of it all. Because you know you don't have the law, you know you don't have the facts, and so the only thing that you can do is pound the table. Now here is Representative Jamie Raskin, who gets asked about our dear friend Ray Epps, somebody who was on the FBI's most wanted list very early on before he was taken off. Somebody who was seen by multiple videos outside of Congress shouting the night before January 6th, into the Capitol, we're going in. Somebody who the day of January 6th was there at the first breach at the side of the Capitol that we've talked about many times. And he was not arrested. Why? He was interviewed. Everybody else who was doing similar things, arrested, charged with crimes, sitting in solitary confinement, January 6th, insurrectionists, we've been told, for coming up on 2 years now. Ray Epps is roaming free, driving around in a $2 million, allegedly, RV with his wife on the run. And we have a lot of questions about it. So does Representative Thomas Massie, one of the only people asking any questions about this. And he sends this question over to Jamie Raskin. And when you don't have any answers, when you can't pound the facts, when you can't pound the law, the only thing you can do is pound the table.
Mr. Epps was in front of the January 6th committee, and we were told that a transcript of his interview would be released, but it's never been released. And I wondered, was he sworn
None
in?
of the transcripts have been released, so you don't need a conspiracy theory about that. We haven't released any of them.
Were you present when he was interviewed? That would give me some...
No, I was not. We've done more than 1,000 interviews. You guys are trying to make this poor schmuck who showed up to your protest into something a lot bigger than he is.
Poor schmuck?
Okay, he's just trying to survive, and he's on your side. You don't have many voters left. You might want to try to hang on to them without demonizing and vilifying your own people. But that's the Donald Trump way. Sell everybody else down the road.
Listen.
Unless you're going to get a pardon. Some people are still hanging around waiting for their pardon. But most people have opened their eyes about what he's done to our country, what he's done to his family. Have you guys ever read the book by Mary Trump about the way that Donald Trump has absolutely destroyed their family? wrecked her father's life. They do it to family. They do it to friends. They do it to their own associates and employees. And now you guys are doing it to this poor Ray Epps. Leave that guy alone, whoever he is.
Whoever he is. No idea.
I yield back to Ms. Garcia.
No idea. And, you know, I don't know what sort of session they were in or the back and forth that was allowed or not allowed there. But Thomas Massie didn't interject or interrupt him at all. He just said, go for it. Let him go. You know, Thomas Massie actually asked him a question. Did you have those transcripts from that interview you did with Ray Epps when your garbage fake committee called him in front of you? Were you there? And then he just goes off. And Thomas Massie, to his credit, just lets him go. By the end of it, he's talking about Ashley Biden's book. What? Or Trump, who? I don't even know what he's talking about. The question was about Ray Epps. And this guy, Mr. Raskin, who is ranting and raving every day about what a catastrophe this was, what an end of the world event, literally how close to the brink American democracy was. It's been his life's work for the last 2 years. The only thing. Suddenly is now sympathetic to Ray Epps. Leave this poor schmuck alone, he says. What are they covering up over there? Ray Epps, I don't even know who that is. Whoever that is. Let's listen to that again. Whoever that is. You buy that for a second?
Mary Trump about the way that Donald Trump has absolutely destroyed their family, wrecked her father's life.
Go ahead.
They do it to family. They do it to friends. They do it to their own associates and employees. And now you guys are doing it to this poor Ray Epps. Leave that guy alone, whoever he is.
Whoever he is. He was on the FBI's most wanted list, like in the top 20 after January 6th, Raskin. We know who he is. Most of America knows who he is. Why don't you? Well, he knows exactly who he is, but he knows that the facts are not on his side. The law is not on his side. So all he does is pound the table, just pounding it away because that's what he does. Now, Jamie Raskin was also on somebody's show being interviewed, and there's a very interesting thing that's happening. Remember, the months up to the November elections are filled with October surprises, and everybody is reaching into the bottom of the barrel to drag out these narratives, to drag out these stories that they can throw at the other side to see if they stick. Well, part of the problem is some of these stories are just nothing burgers, right? They don't make a lot of sense. And we can see some of that bubbling up here when Jamie Raskin was on with Meet the Press. He gets asked about the status of the January 6th committee hearings and about the potential end of America that he's been working so hard on. And he gets brought to his attention this very dramatic piece of information. There was a phone call that took place, and I don't know who made it. Let's see if we can piece this together.
Let me start with something that's getting a lot of buzz on social media. It's going to be on tonight's episode of 60 Minutes.
Okay,
Former
great.
member of Congress Denver Riggleman, who was an investigator, has made the following charge. Take a listen.
All right, so
when you see that the White House switchboard had connected to a rioter's phone while it's happening, that's a pretty big aha moment.
Wow.
You get an aha
Wait a
moment.
minute. Someone in the White House was calling one of the rioters while the riot was going on?
On January 6th, absolutely.
wow.
And you know who both ends of that
I
call?
only know one end of that call. I don't know the White House end.
We only know one end of the phone call. The White House switchboard got a call from a rioter on the day of the riot. Who could it be? Was it Trump? Was he there talking with Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers? Did you get the podium?
It's an alarming finding. What can you confirm? What can you tell us about it?
Well, that's one of thousands of details that obviously the committee is aware of, and our job is to put everything into a comprehensive portrait and narrative timeline of what took place. And to me, it's interesting, but much less interesting than the fact that Donald Trump told the crowd in public, you got to fight like hell, and if you don't, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Oh my gosh. So this poor guy on NBC News, whoever that was, he's out there really encouraging Raskin. He's like, oh my gosh, we've got this 60 Minutes interview coming up. There's this guy out here who says he's got evidence of a phone call. Wait a minute. A phone call from a rioter to the White House? Was that after Trump broke the Secret Service clavicle or after the clavicle? When did the phone call come in? Was it before he tried to commandeer Marine One and pick up the podium guy and broke the beast clavicle driver's shoulders off? Was it before or after he got on the phone? I don't know. It's hard to keep track of all these things. But Raskin, right, he's incentivized by this reporter to make this a big deal. That's a shocking revelation. We're going to be reporting this later. What do you think? He goes, well, that's right. Well, it's an interesting thing, but let me tell you what's really interesting. When Trump got out there and he said, fight like hell, otherwise you're not going to have a country. That's what the real catastrophic thing was. That little speech, little couple words there, that every other Democrat has ever said ever. That Jamie Raskin himself objected to prior elections from the floor of Congress. I object. Himself. But he says that Trump fighting like hell is insurrectionary. So you see the little bit of a mismatch there. And Raskin, the only thing he really wants to do is just create a narrative as he's going to explain. It's the totality of the circumstances is what we call this in the law. You say, look, all these little things are mostly inconsequential. This is what cops do all the time. It's annoying. But they say the totality of the circumstances. And this is what judges do too when they don't want to give you a hard answer. When they don't want to key in on anything, they're like, this case sucks. But if I cobble all of this stuff together, then I can just say, oh, totality of the circumstances. And then I can create a narrative that supports my ends by just cobbling together a bunch of maybe irrelevant, poor facts and smashing them all together. Here's what Raskin is doing with that.
So, look, we're interested in telling the big story, which is this was an organized, premeditated, deliberate hit against the vice president and the Congress to overthrow the 2020 presidential election.
It was a deliberate hit. It was a hit to take out Pence.
I think the public understands the basic elements of the story. What we're going to do on Wednesday is fill in those details that have come to the attention of the committee over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
All right, so they're going to be back in session on Wednesday. We're going to see Jamie Raskin. I hope that we learn something new on that day, but I really, really doubt that we do. It'd be very interesting if they had an adversarial process, if they brought any other Republicans to question anybody, but we're not going to get that. So that is the update, of course, on Trump and the special master saga. He is going to continue to come under the microscope of all of the anti-Trumpers, the people full of TDS, including Letitia James, Jamie Raskin, and of course, Hillary Clinton, now saying that everybody who even, I guess, puts their hands in the air at a Trump rally is a Nazi or something. So we'll continue to cover that. There'll be much more, I'm sure of it. We'll continue to follow. Thank you for subscribing and for liking this video and joining us as we continue to do so. And all right, my friends, we're going to jump into the commitment to America. Republicans are now showing signs of life. Maybe they are releasing their new commitment to America. Representative McCarthy, the House leader, publishing a new plan for America in the run-up to the 2024-2022 elections. Now, there is some interestingness to this. Of course, we're going to see the repeal of IRS agents that were just passed by the Biden administration. And we're going to learn a little bit more about what the plan says, along with reaction from the White House, Karine Jean Pierre. And there was some video of Pelosi also being welcomed by the people there in New York. And so we're going to get into all of it. But before we dive into the meat and potatoes on the plan, let's take a listen to Representative McCarthy. McCarthy is here on the unveiling. They had an event where they gathered everybody together. You can see some faces that we are familiar with in the background. And that's Marjorie Taylor Greene right there to McCarthy's left. And here he is unveiling this plan to America, hoping that this might juice some enthusiasm for the Republicans in the months leading up to the election.
Our job is to work for you, not go after you. Our job is to make America stronger. We believe America's more than a country. America's an idea.
Yeah, okay. Sounds
We
good.
can secure our border.
Okay, great.
We could become energy independent.
Perfect.
Where your price of gas is lower.
Great.
We can build an education system that has a parent's bill of rights, that you have a say in your kids' education. And we could be a check and balance on the rein in this government that's going after the individuals.
Marjorie.
If you believe like us, join with us. because this job won't be easy. We'll get it through the House. We need your help to get it all the way to his desk. You know, the president last night already attacked me in this plan. Maybe if I caused that much damage, I'd try to change the discussion too. But you know what? I welcome it. I challenge the president to join with us. Let's go across the country and let's debate what his policies has done to America and our plan for a new direction. And let's let America make the decision for the best way for this country to go forward. So join with us, and thank you for what you're doing.
Okay, so that's the Republican leader. We're going to get into the plan. I'm not sure that there's going to be much meat and potatoes there, but he said some interesting things, like a parental bill of rights for education and the children. Very interesting. And we will, of course, go through the plan. So that's Representative McCarthy with his little speech. All right. Let's take a look now at the actual commitment. This is the preamble for the Republican Commitment to America just released by Representative McCarthy. Here's what he says. America is exceptional. As Americans, we cherish our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We salute those who paid the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of our freedoms. We celebrate the rich heritage of America, the story and the vibrancy of the dreams of America, and we embrace the responsibility to protect and uphold the nation. Oh my God, the shining beacon of hope, right? Okay, thank you for this. We're not going to allow a new direction. A better approach is going to get our nation back on track. Because Americans are workers, we commit to remove... All right, look, I'm not even going to read this. All right, it's just a bunch of word salad vomit. The extreme ideology of this Democrat majority blinds them. Yeah, all right. So there's nothing interesting or useful there at all. Let's see what we have here. This is their one-pager commitment to America. Republicans unveiling this in hopes of winning the next elections. Here are some bullet points that they say they're going to do if you vote them into power. 1, an economy that's strong. They're going to fight inflation and they're going to lower the cost of living. How are they going to do this? Well, they're going to curb wasteful government spending. Sounds good. And they're saying that's rising the price of gas and other things, growing our national debt. All right. They're going to increase take-home pay, create good paying jobs, and bring stability to the economy through pro-growth tax and deregulatory policies. They're going to make America energy independent, maximize reduction of American-made energy. Okay, that's good. Strengthen the supply chain and end dependence on China. All right. Now, this is something I've been listening to them say for about 37 years of my life now. Secure the border and combat illegal immigration. So just forget this, right? This is all not going to happen at all. They say that they're going to fully fund effective border enforcement strategies, infrastructure, and advanced technology, and they're going to end catch and release, and they're going to require legal status to get a job. Okay, so just disregard this whole stinking thing, right? This is all nonsense. That's obviously not going to happen. They've been promising that for decades. Never going to happen. Reduce crime and protect public safety. Now, this is going to be a big issue. Even Jen Psaki is saying this is going to be a big problem. Support 200,000 more police officers. The Democrats are getting blown out on public safety issues, especially for the defund the police saga that they dragged America through. But they're saying they're going to crack down on prosecutors and district attorneys who refuse to prosecute crimes. And then they're going to support 200,000 more police officers. They'll, recruiting bonuses and stopping defunding the police. And so put a pin in that. We're going to come back on that one. They're also going to defend America's national security. Okay, so what are they here? They're going to establish a select committee on China. Well, hopefully it has more legitimacy than the current fake select committee. A future that's built on freedom. Every student can succeed and give parents a voice. So they want a parent's bill of rights, which is actually something new and something that is concrete that I see here. First time that we see something. A parental bill of rights, expanding parental choice to schools, defending fairness by ensuring that only women can compete in women's sports. Ooh, that's a spicy one. We have achieve longer, healthier lives for Americans. So the government's not going to ever be able to do that. So forget that. Confront big tech and demand fairness. Also forget that. That's also never going to happen. So just forget that one too. A government that's accountable. Let's see here. Preserve our constitutional freedoms. I doubt that as well. So forget about that. They haven't done anything on free speech. Hold Washington accountable. They are Washington, so forget that. And restore the people's votes. Here, let's see what this one says. End special treatment for members of Congress by repealing proxy voting. Increase accountability in the election process through voter ID. Would be nice. Accurate voter rolls and observer access. And so Joe Biden also is going to beat up on McCarthy for this one as well, saying that they're going to be increasing the faith in our elections. The Republicans are going to do that. That doesn't make any sense at all, says Joe Biden. Of course, we will take a look at that here. So this is the plan that the Republicans are rolling out. I don't see anything really new or interesting at all. I see a bunch of the same old talking points that we've seen previously. And so, not really optimistic about that. Thanks, McCarthy, but no thanks. He, of course, is out there with one good point on this whole thing. They are going to, on day one, apparently, McCarthy says, repeal the IRS agents. On day one, when the Republicans take over, if they win the elections, those 87,000 IRS agents that Biden wants to cram down your gullet, McCarthy says they're gone.
But this is a fight not for the Republican Party. This is a fight for our nation. If you want an economy that's strong, if you want a nation that's safe again in your streets, if you want a future that's built on freedom, and if you want to have some accountability to your government, this is what's going to happen. And Sean, I promise you this, on the very first day, our very first bill is going to repeal 87,000 IRS agents. Because you know what? We work for you, and it's not the other way around.
That would be very nice. Nobody wants 87,000 IRS agents. But McCarthy, unless they have the Senate, all right, what happens? Well, it's going to go from the House over to the Senate. Even if it goes to the Senate, it's going to go over to Biden. And what's Biden going to do? Throw it right in the garbage. So thank you, McCarthy, for those nice promises. But we all know that, basically at most you can do at this point is just to stonewall and make the president a lame duck. Actually, I guess, yeah, because the House has the power of the purse, but hasn't that bill already been passed and signed into law by Biden? He's not going to sign a bill undoing that. So it's going to take some time for anything meaningful to come out of it. But that is Kevin McCarthy, who is communicating that the Republicans are at least going to make an attempt to repeal and pull back those 87,000 IRS agents. Joe Biden also responding to Kevin McCarthy and the Republican commitment to America. And there's something interesting going on here. Joe Biden, he's usually pretty tied and tethered to that teleprompter. And he's standing in front of a podium with microphones, and he's got a microphone in his hand. And you go, well, that's kind of weird. Why is he standing in front of a microphone with microphones, and he's got a microphone in his hand? He does this a lot when he picks up a microphone and he sort of wants to talk and walk, just like we do on our morning walk and talks. And Joe Biden is out there now speaking in front of a crowd, and he's reading the teleprompter. And watch his eyeballs as he is walking back and forth, pacing across the stage. He cannot let go off the teleprompter. So he's sort of faking like he has this ad-lib conversation going on with the crowd. But watch every time he turns right back to that teleprompter and he reads right to it. Let's watch.
With a straight face, Kevin McCarthy says the MAGA Republic are going to restore faith in our elections. As we say in my faith, bless me, Father, for I have sinned.
Hey, watch. Right back to it.
Restore faith in our elections. MAGA Republicans refused to accept the results of the 2020 election and the will of the people. 81 million people voted Democrat for president last time. Even though they lost court case after court case
now
after
right
court
back
case
over
after
to the
court
teleprompter.
Case after court case.
Look. See that quick turn?
In front of Trump-appointed judges. And recount after recount proved the results were accurate.
So that's Joe. Now, again, very interesting little new tactic they're trying out with him. You don't see that a whole lot. And so he's got the double microphone. We covered previously on this show. Remember after he gave that MAGA death speech from the Seventh Circle of Hell, after he walked out, they shut the mics off. He came back, picked up the other mic, tried to talk into it, but that mic was off too. And then his caretaker, Jill, escorted him back into the Seventh Circle. So it's interesting to watch. But what was he saying there? What was his point? Oh, yeah, about the election and saying that the Republicans are now going to be sort of like a joke, that they're going to be fortifying elections, that they're going to want to make sure that there aren't problems by clearing out problematic voter rolls, by having voter ID, by making sure that the integrity of the voting system is appropriate. They're laughing at that because, of course, that's not what they want. They want everybody to vote however often they want to vote. They can use 35 pronouns, vote 35 times, depending on how they're feeling. And it's just madness. It's free for all. But that is what Biden said about the commitment to America, which is inclusive of some Republican efforts to harden up the elections a little bit. Karine Jean Pierre got some hard questions from Peter Doocey. Over at the White House, she was responding to the commitment to America put forward by the Republicans. A big part of the plan is to address crime. We can see crime waves taking place in cities all over the country. And so Peter Doocey from Fox News went in to the press briefing room with Karine Jean Pierre and said, hey, Karine, you've got a little bit of a crime problem, don't you? What do you think this administration is doing to solve this? Are you making any progress that is meaningful in any way, shape, or form? Here is Doocey.
Does President Biden think America's big cities are safe?
Can you say more?
Well, we know that thefts and robberies are up about 20% in the first half of this year, so I'm wondering if he thinks America's big cities are safe.
Are you talking about the New York Times story specifically? Or is that what you're referring to?
The murder rate's still 30% above its 2019 level. They're all from the Council on Criminal Justice. So we've seen some high-profile examples of this. The Washington Commanders running back was being mugged. He got shot. Karen Bass, member of Congress, had her house robbed. These are high-profile people. So should everyday Americans who are not in the public eye feel safe?
So
it's not just the little people, Karine, who are dealing with crime waves in drug-addicted cities all over the place. It's also Congress people like Karen Bass, who had her house robbed.
I'll say this, that same story also stated that the crime is complicated and multifaceted.
Okay.
Look, this is a president who has secured historic funding to make sure that law enforcement has what it needs, especially, and he was able to do this in the face of opposition from Republicans. During
Republicans
a time,
did it.
Where he inherited a rising crime rate from the previous administration, the president put forth the American Rescue Plan, and in that very plan, there was more than $300 billion to go to local states and local cities to make sure that they were able to hire law officers. They were able to hire, firefighters. They were able to hire people that were critical to their needs as they were dealing with a pandemic. Republicans voted against that.
So I guess
Republicans
the
blew
original
it.
question: does President Biden think America's big cities are safe?
It is not a yes or no question. It is very much a question of what has he done? That's how we see the question, is what has he done?
Are the cities safe? Yes or no? Karine Jean Pierre says it's not a yes or no question. And that's not a good answer for the press secretary from the White House. The obvious answer is, of course, the cities are safe. Of course they're safe. Everywhere they're safe. Yes, American men and women and whatever can sleep soundly at night without any fear because Joe Biden's in charge. And here's the things he's done. Here's the things that he's already doing. But for Karine to turn around and say, well, we can't really say yes or no on are you safe in your city? Not good look.
Does President Biden think America's big cities are safe?
It is not a yes or no question.
Rough.
It is very much a question of what has he done? That's how we see the question, is what has he done?
First of all, they also don't even care about results. Did you catch that? It's not about results. It's not about whether America is safe or not. It's not about whether you're going to get mugged if you're a congressperson or had your house robbed if you're whatever. It's about what they've done. They've tried a lot. They've really thought a lot about it. They care a lot. I mean, they talk a lot about it. They pass bills and stuff, and they sit around in conference rooms and they yell at each other about it, and they post websites, and they're on Twitter all day. And that's what is really most important, Peter, idiot. And so the fact that there are murders taking place all over the country is irrelevant. We've tried really hard. All right. Well, we know that that's sort of how they operate and conduct themselves. It's about feelings. It's about emotions. It's about how one comports themselves that is the true value, I guess, in the world, not about the results that they deliver. And so Jen Psaki, who we're very familiar with, it's been some time since we've had a Jen Psaki appearance. Jen Psaki is trying on her new gig over on the cable channels. Here she is on Meet the Press, and she's doing some commentary on the upcoming election. And she knows a little bit about the Biden White House because she used to work in it, maybe even run it. Here's Jen talking about crime and about how this could be a pretty big problem for the Democrats come November.
Yeah, look, I think that Democrats, if the election is about who is the most extreme, as we saw, Kevin McCarthy touch on there with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'll say her name, sitting over his left side, then they're going to win. If it is a referendum on the president, they will lose, and they know that. They also know that crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats. I would say one of the biggest vulnerabilities.
Yikes.
And if you look at Pennsylvania, for example, what's been interesting to me is it's always you follow the money and where are people spending money. And in Pennsylvania, the Republicans have been spending millions of dollars on the air on crime ads against Fetterman because that's where they see his vulnerability. So yes, the economy is hanging over everything, but you do have to look at state-by-state factors, and crime is a huge issue in the Pennsylvania race.
Wow, Jen Psaki out there. What did they used to call those when she would hit Peter Doocey with them Psaki bombs or something like that? Well, how does it feel when they're Psaki bombing you right back at your own White House? Probably doesn't feel too good. Saying that, Jen, you just left, by the way. It's kind of rude of you to talk garbage about the administration that you were just a part of. She's like, yeah, crime's a pretty big vulnerability. Like a year ago, she was like, no, crime's great. Crime's great. There's no problems at all. What are you talking about? And now she's like, yeah, it's a pretty big vulnerability. So it's kind of funny how quickly that hat changes from White House sycophant to MSNBC, NBC, whatever this is, commentator sitting at a round table with other sophistication people. So that's now pretty big, pretty interesting statement there. Yeah, criminal mismanagement is a gigantic problem in the upcoming election. And Peter Doocey asked Karine Jean Pierre about that. At the White House, he says, hey, Karine, your former boss, somebody who was sort of, here before you, who was holding down the fort before you actually landed in this position. Jen Psaki said that crime is going to be a pretty big issue for you, your team, and your people in the upcoming election. Do you agree with that, yes or no?
Jen Psaki says that crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats. Why would she say that?
So, again, I can't do electoral politics from here, as you know.
You can't?
But
you
I kind of
every day.
I don't agree with your characterization of what she actually said.
They also know that crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats. I would say one of the biggest vulnerabilities.
Oh, well, there it is. So let's say that once again, side by side, because it does seem that Peter Doocey got her statement exactly right. Let's listen.
They also know that crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats. I would say one of the biggest vulnerabilities.
Jen Psaki says that crime is a huge vulnerability for
verbatim.
Democrats. Why would she say
verbatim?
That?
I don't agree with your characterization of what she actually said.
Well, that's okay, because that is exactly what she actually said. So that's okay, Karine. You don't have to agree. But it's the reality. And that is the reaction from the White House. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi is out there in New York City, and she's trying to be hip. She's trying to hang out with all the cool kids and get out there and talk about climate change or 40 years in government, or I don't know. But she gets booed in front of all these people that are supposed to love her. I mean, she's in New York, after all. They vote blue very reliably. Why is there no love for the Speaker of the House, Nancy?
40% by 2030, it will give a historic 370.
Historic, she's talking about who knows what. There's another clip here, another angle of Pelosi being booed in New York City. Here she is, and somebody asks in this one, why are they booing her? everybody just wants to get back to the show. Nobody wants to listen to a climate change lecture from Nancy Pelosi.
I couldn't talk about
As Speaker of the House, I am here to thank you for your dedication.
Nancy Pelosi.
Why
is everybody booing?
Nobody likes her. Get out of here. We want to get back to the show. Nancy Pelosi feeling the wrath of the New York crowd when she's trying to shove climate change and something, whatever else, down everybody's gullet. And so we'll, of course, continue to cover the Republican commitment to America. We'll see if the Republicans get any life breathed into them, if Cocaine Mitch gets a little, sniffly activity and brings anything new to the table in terms of electoral politics. We'll continue to cover, and we appreciate you following and joining us as we do. Oh, God, and somebody just sent in that Nancy Pelosi photograph. Oh, gosh, on the beach, that one. Yeah, over on Locals. Rough. All right, and so we'll leave that one over there. But we've got one final segment, my friends, before we jump into your questions and your comments and your super chats, all of which this week through October 8th, they're all being donated over to Eric's house. And I appreciate your support over there. And matched. Donated and matched over there. And if you want to donate directly to Eric's house, the link is in the description below. So you're going to hear me being very aggressive with this for about 2 weeks. So apologies in advance. It's for a good cause. That's why it's being done. All right, we've got one final segment, and so let's get right into it. Giorgia Maloni wins the election in Italy, causing a lot of ruckus around Europe. Many people happy, thrilled about this. Others very concerned that a neo-fascist, so-called, is now in charge over there, which is very new. I didn't realize that. But apparently, Benito Mussolini is back in charge. We're going to see this montage that was put together by the Media Research Center that does amazing work. They got this clip out rapid fire. And you can see it's 1 minute and 29 seconds of all of the hysterics in the media saying that this woman, Maloni, who just got elected in Italy, shout out, is now a neo-fascist.
Voters in Italy tomorrow appear poised to make a hard right turn. The woman expected to become prime minister leads a party with roots in neo-fascism.
Wow.
Hallmarks of Italian fascism, like this motto. God, fatherland, and family.
A far-right political party whose roots go back to post-World War II neo-fascists.
Far-right political party whose roots go back to post-World War II neo-fascists.
Roots in Italy's post-war fascist movement.
Roots in Italy's 20th century neo-fascist movement.
Maloni herself was a hardcore neo-fascist militant.
Stunning because of Italy's disastrous history, the last time a hard-right party rose to power.
The most far-right government in that country since Mussolini.
Most right-wing government since Mussolini.
Wow.
Since Mussolini.
A red flag, if there ever was one, says Edith Brooke, a renowned poet and Holocaust survivor.
Italy about to see the country's most right-wing government since World War II.
Wow.
Most far-right government since World War II.
Since the end of World War II.
Maloni's win will probably send alarm bells throughout Europe.
You know, it's alarming to a lot of people around Europe.
Italy is revered for its history, but not all of that history is beautiful, and many fear that one particularly ugly chapter could soon repeat itself.
Yes, that's right. You've got the neo-fascist Maloni, who just won. And just so that you know, we've got a little bit of a content warning because we're going to listen to her speech right now. The media just characterized her as a neo-fascist, somebody who is reminiscent of Benito Mussolini, who was, of course, the dictator back during World War II. Here is Giorgia Maloni's incredible speech. Extremely moving. This speech has captured the internet. And I want to do a quick refresh. Let's see how many views this video has now. This was over on Twitter, 13.8 million views. Okay, so at the start of the show, it was like, what, 13.2, 13.3? So it got 500,000 views in about an hour and 11 minutes or whatever it's been. 15 minutes. So 13.8 million views. It's just, it's spreading around the internet like wildfire. And so let's take a look and watch it. So This is Giorgia Maloni on her victory night, explaining what she stands for and why she won. And it's capturing the internet by storm. Well over 13 million views at this moment in time, for good reason.
Potrei farne tante altre di queste domande. A monte c'è quella che ci facciamo oggi: perché la famiglia è un nemico? Perché la famiglia fa così paura? C'è una risposta unica per tutte queste domande. Perché ci definisce, perché è la nostra identità. Perché tutto quello che ci definisce in questo tempo è un nemico. Per chi vorrebbe che non avessimo più un'identità e che fossimo solamente schiavi, consumatori perfetti. E allora è sotto attacco l'identità nazionale, è sotto attacco l'identità religiosa, è sotto attacco l'identità di genere, è sotto attacco l'identità familiare. Non devo potermi definire italiana, cristiana, donna, madre, no. Io devo essere cittadino X, genere X, genitore 1, genitore 2, devo essere un numero. Perché quando sarò solamente un numero, quando non avrò più un'identità, quando non avrò più radici, beh, allora sarò lo schiavo perfetto in balia della grande speculazione finanziaria, il consumatore perfetto. E questa è la ragione per la quale oggi noi facciamo tanta paura. Questa è la ragione per la quale oggi questo appuntamento fa tanta paura. Perché noi non vogliamo essere dei numeri, noi siamo qui per dire che noi non siamo dei numeri, noi difenderemo il valore della persona umana, di ogni singola persona umana, perché ognuno di noi ha un codice genetico unico e irripetibile. E questo, piaccia o no, ha del sacro. Lo difenderemo Dio, la patria e la famiglia, che fanno tanto schifo a qualcuno. Lo faremo per difendere la nostra libertà, perché noi non saremo mai schiavi e semplici consumatori in balia della speculazione finanziaria. Ecco la nostra missione, ecco perché oggi sono venuta qui. Scriveva Chesteron ormai più di un secolo fa, vediamo se ve lo trovo: fuochi verranno attizzati per dimostrare che 2 più 2 fa 4. Spade verranno sguainate per dimostrare che le foglie sono verdi in estate. Quel tempo è arrivato, signori. Siamo pronti. Grazie.
That time has arrived. We are ready. Thank you. And she read a quote there from Mr. J.K. Chesterton saying that swords will be drawn to prove that leaves are green in the summer. Very interesting quote from this man. G.K. Chesterton, born out of London, England. You can see him here. Very, very astute, scholarly gentleman. And I absolutely love the outfit. Here's a little bit more about G.K. Chesterton. He was born May 1874. English writer, philosopher, lay theologian, literary art critic, referred to as the Prince of Paradox. Of his writing style, we observed that whenever possible, Chesterton made his points with popular sayings, with proverbs, with allegories, first carefully turning them inside out. He created a number of different characters, routinely referred to himself as an Orthodox Christian, came to identify with Roman Catholicism, shout out, and he's been in close relation with a number of authors. Died June 14th, 1936, age 62. And you may have heard of Chesterton. You may have heard of a concept called Chesterton's fence, in fact. Chesterton's fence is, according to Wikipedia, the principle that reforms should not be made until the reasoning is understood. And so there's this concept, you might hear this in debates or in political conversations, where they talk about Chesterton's fence. And he wrote previously, he says, there exists in such a case certain institution or law, let us say for the sake of simplicity, where there's a fence or a gate that comes across a road. The more modern type of a reformer goes up to the gate and they say, I don't understand what this gate is here for. There's a road and I'm driving through this and there's a fence and a gate. What is all of this? I'll just knock it out of the way, right? That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, to the more intelligent type of reformer, will do well to answer saying this: if you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then when you do, you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it. I may allow you to destroy it. When you do see the use of it, only then will I allow you to destroy it. Okay, so if you just don't understand something, you can't just start swinging your elbows around and destroying things. Understand it before you reform it. Don't just be a reformer who destroys institutions. And we talked a lot about this on our morning walk and talk today. The Lindy Law, the idea that it's important to have reverence and value in your social institutions. We talked about Edmund Burke and social fabrics. Now, the quote that Miss Maloney was reading from is from a book called Heretics that Chesteron wrote. And here's what that book says at the final conclusion of the book called Heretics. This is the full quote. This is the full passage. He says, "Truths turn into dogmas the instant that they are disputed. Thus, every man who utters a doubt defines a religion. And the skepticism of our time does not really destroy the beliefs, rather it creates them, gives them their limits and their plain and defiant shape. We who are liberals, sort of old liberal, right? Old big L liberal, once held liberalism lightly as a truism. Now it has been disputed, and we hold it as fiercely as a faith. Right? Things like free speech, things like the Enlightenment era thinking are all challenged now. We who believe in patriotism once thought patriotism to be reasonable and thought little more about it. Now we know it to be unreasonable and know it to be right. We who are Christians never knew the great philosophic common sense which inheres in that mystery until the anti-Christian writers pointed it out to us. The great march of mental destruction will go on. Everything will be denied. Everything will become a creed. It is a reasonable position to deny the stones in the street. It will be a religious dogma to assert them. It is a rational thesis that we are all in a dream. It will be a mystical sanity to say that we are all awake. Fires will be kindled to testify that 2 and 2 make 4. Swords will be drawn to prove that leaves are green in summer. We shall be left defending not only the incredible virtues and sanities of human life, but something more incredible still, this huge impossible universe which stares us in the face. We shall fight for visible prodigies as if they were invisible. We shall look on the impossible grass in the skies with a strange courage. We shall be of those who have seen and yet have believed." Whoa! So that is some heavy stuff there. Swords will be drawn to prove that leaves are green in the summer. And as we talked about this morning on our walk and talk, all sorts of efforts are being made to redefine speech, to call things differently than what reality tells us they are. And Miss Maloney was not just speaking about this recently. Maloney was here in the United States in February 2022 at CPAC, where she was saying that this new era, this new age is upon us, where more and more individuals are becoming awakened. More people are recognizing this evisceration of the social fabric that Edmund Burke talks about. The idea that we are all interconnected, that we have to create a polite, cohesive society on the backs of these little threads of fabric, these tapestries that we weave together through our societies. She's saying that as the forces are out there intending to evaporate those foundations, more and more people are waking up and making their voices heard.
Each of us has a role to play in defending all these things. And the good news is that here, as in Europe, more and more people are choosing to react.
That's right.
They are reacting against their Chinese model, against their fake news media,
yes,
against their politically correct dictatorship. The true Europe will not give up. The true America will not give up.
That's right, baby.
We will be awakening many more like ourselves.
Yes.
And there will always be more of us. They will try to take everything away from us, but they can't take away who we are.
That's right.
And you know what? Cherishing who we are, knowing what we stand for, is all we need to face this challenge.
That's right. Know thyself, identify those values, stand for them, speak them loudly and proudly from the rooftops. and all will be okay. That is Giorgia Maloni winning the election in Italy, causing some serious ruckus out there. Ursula von der Leyen is the president of the EU Commission, and they like things to go their way. They like very much for the EU countries to fall in line, do what they say, because they are one country now that's run by Klaus Schwab or somebody. But here she is in the days before the election in Italy saying that if Maloney wins this thing, they have some tools that they can use if it doesn't go right, if it goes wrong, if it goes badly, if she wins, if they do something that is not in alignment with the rest of what the president of the EU Commission wants, here's what they can do about it.
We'll see. If things go in a difficult direction, I've spoken about Hungary and Poland, we have tools. If things go in the right direction, and people as a body that is always, where always governments have to be accountable to, play an important role.
We have tools if they don't go the right way. Her way. The arrogance is outstanding. I mean, it's incredible how big it is. The Italian people just voted. That is the right way. That is the way. You may disagree with it, but that's how they voted. And now I guess Italy is going to be subject to the EU tools from the commissioner, the president of the EU Commission. Very interesting over there. So who's really in charge? Do the Italians have their own self-autonomy? Are they capable of deciding their own destiny? Or do they have to check in with this psychopath? Well, I don't know. But regardless, they have elected Giorgia Maloni. Congratulations to my Italian brothers and sisters out there. Big shout out on a tremendous victory. And I look forward to hearing more from Maloni. All right, my friends. And that is it for the program. We covered a lot of ground here today. You can see 3 big whopping segments. We talked about the McCarthy commitment to America. We talked all about Donald Trump, a couple new special master orders there. And we had our final update on Miss Maloni. And so now it is time to hear from you, my friends, over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we are queuing up some of those super chats that came in from my friends. I see Zulu submitted a couple. Thank you, guys. So as I said, all of these are going over to the Hope and Healing community over here. This is my page, Robert Gouvet. I'm a team member here. And I'm going to start matching donations. So after every show, if you send any super chats in, I'm going to send them over and I'm going to match them on my page right here. And if you want to bypass the YouTube stuff and just go right over here, the link on my page is in the description. But we're going to get into those, of course, right now as soon as I finish queuing this stuff up. In fact, here's a couple that came in right to start the day out. I'm very grateful for everybody. Yes, so K Beans here, amazing. All right, we got some super chats. From C. Reed, he says, woot woot, shout out to moms. My mom's going to be very happy about this. She doesn't know I'm doing this yet. At Eric's house, they don't know that I'm doing this yet. So I'm going to do this every show, and we're going to see how much we can generate. I'm going to match it up to a certain amount, all right? It's going to, I'm not like filthy rich or anything, so. But I think we can make a serious dent on the goal. We had another one that came in. C. Reed, Zulu says, always for Eric's house. Thank you very much, Zulu. Very generous of you, Zulu, with a super chat. Another one from K Bean came in. All right, awesome. Woo, this is going to be fun. So I'm going to start dumping some coin over there. It's going to be fun. Just Kyle says, Eric's house. Rob, have you seen they requested funds from the state to charge Alec and others? Came out today. I did see the Alec Baldwin stuff. I have not looked at it in depth, but I will. Oh my gosh, Yulu's sending more money. Says make Rob broke. Oh, great. I love it. I'm going to do it. Here, Just Kyle says, yeah, I haven't been following the Alec Baldwin stuff really in quite some time, but that is interesting. I'm going to see I wonder what they're charging him with. 66 Antone and playing hooky with some super chats, all going over to Eric's house. And so you're going to see me add all these up after the show and donate on the page. And so all that's going to Eric's house. Thank you, everybody. And I know Zulu just sent in another one saying that tonight's super chats go to Eric's house And it's matched donation to Eric's house via Super Chat tonight. Trying to make things better is why we're all here. This is an actual direct opportunity. That's an awesome point, Zulu. So if you're not familiar with Eric's House, they do all sorts of amazing things. Check it out at ericshouse.org. But the three things: suicide, overdose, or tragic death. That's really what the organization is set up for. We have our big annual event coming up October 8th. And so we're generating some funds between now and then, all over to Eric's House. And they really do like amazing work, right? I lost my brother to suicide, and I didn't have a sort of a circle of support like Eric's House has created. And now a lot of people do. A lot of people have gone through a lot of horrific things. Zulu says, tonight's Super Chats go to Eric's House, not more jewel-encrusted racing stripes for Rob's Maserati fleet. Make a difference to someone who needs it. Yeah, I don't need any more Maseratis. I mean, how many really, until it becomes a fleet into just problem territory? You only need, so many Maseratis. Thanks for pointing that out, Zulu. I appreciate that. All right, let's see what we've got over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com while we're doing a refresh. Oh my goodness. What have I done here? That's not the button I wanted. Here we go now. Yeah, Zach Nichols says, yep, somebody's always, Zach Nichols says, somebody always has it worse. Yeah, and there's also some comments about Maseratis being garbage. I don't think I've ever driven in a Maserati. I don't know anything about that. Okay, who is here getting us started today? Fed Cure on Local says, ciao, Roberto. Viva la Italia. Bravo. Giorgia Maloni. Georgia is no fascist. Italians didn't buy it. The Italian left didn't either, as only 81% stayed home not bothering to vote. One-day election. Roadmap for the midterms. It was one day, huh? Didn't have to go to the Supreme Court and everything. That's great. It's good to see you, Fed Cure. Here's another one from Kenny Cole. He says, the Italian election is a roadmap, as Fed Cure says. I never saw a Biden shirt. His rallies were empty, but the Dems didn't have to produce a warm body in 2020. We'll see in November if it's going to need to be somewhat representative of a president with 39% approval and a party massively underwater on all relevant issues. Kenny, I felt the same way about that. I made that same observation here in Arizona. I got kind of skewered for this observation. But I said, there are no Biden signs anywhere. There's no activity at all of Joe Biden. And I saw people, right, all over the place. People were like strapping Trump signs to their trucks, like 50-foot signs or flags flying all over the place. There was enthusiasm all over the place for Trump. I was surprised as hell that he didn't win Arizona. And if you actually look into this, right, the idea is that stuff matters. There's actually a correlation between yard signs and electoral outcomes. You can sort of say, as a general rule, a certain percentage of people are yard sign people. And if you know what that number is, you can sort of use that model to prognosticate what outcomes will be elsewhere. So I agree with you, Kenny Cole. I thought it was a weird deal. Here, this one came in from Raymond, says, when it comes to Speaker of the House after the next election, is it possible that Trump could be elected to Speaker of the House? I think it's possible. I mean, I think anybody can be elected Speaker, or it's the choice of the House, right? So the people who are elected into the House get to decide who the Speaker of the House is. So if the representatives wanted to do that, they could. And then if something happened, like if something happened, like Biden resigned and Kamala resigned, there's a hierarchy. I think the Speaker is the third who becomes the president. I think third, fourth, maybe. I think it's the third. Yeah, so pretty interesting there. Phil in Flyover is saying, how do you send money anonymously over to Eric's house? So just go over to ericshouse.org, or if you are actually on the page, so like if you go to my page, which is in the description in the link, you can click right here and you can actually get stuff if you donate through this page, Hope and Healing. Donate here. You can get a snack attack. You can get bride and groom something. There's all sorts of stuff that's limited, right? These things sort of are gonna go away soon. There's an intuitive reading here. 3 of those are available. A Melinda Vale intuitive reading. I've gotten intuitive readings before. Let's see, scholarship for the Emmaus Ministry. Amazing, grieving parents. But if you don't want any of those things, you just click here. No thanks, I'd just like to donate. And you can just donate. And you can do it anonymously. You can credit me if you want or donate it anonymously. But after the show's over, I'm going to tally all these numbers up and go make a donation. So thank you, everybody. All right. And so let's go back over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Jason on Blast is here. He says Democrats, including their true believer voters, need to be out of power so long that they're forced to deal with the facts that the rest of the country will no longer play with their dishonest mental games. If they have TDS, there should be an institute, or they should be wholly ignored by society. If they have an institute. It should go into an institute. A TDS institute? Yeah, I was thinking about a medication name for TDS, I was thinking about it. I don't know where this came from, but I was thinking about insurrectophrenia is when you're overly paranoid about insurrection. And if you have insurrectophrenia, you might want to take some seditiaquil. So you don't have, the concerns of sedition. Seditiaquil can deal with your insurrectophrenia, is what I was thinking about for TDS. I don't know what. Sometimes I don't know where that stuff comes from, but that was the question. You can see there. All right, and so let's do a refresh here and see what else we've got. That came in from Jason on Blast. My screens are all out of order today. We're going to go to the previous page and get these queued up here. The YouTube chat, Three Girlies is in the house. Hey, Three Girlies says, so does this mean that the government is conceding the idea that this is going to need to take more time? Youngest Girlie says hi, and shout out to the youngest girlie in the Three Girlies household. Yeah, I think the government, it was just a slight adjustment. Three Girlies, they were just moving it back a couple, days, I guess, from the 20th, just a couple days, from Friday to the 23rd to the 27th. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, they are. They're conceding. This is complicated. It's going to take more time. We also have Edon Tess. He says, Hillary Clinton was watching your show and she concludes, Robert is a young man. Robert raises his arms during the big, beautiful spotlight. Robert is clearly a Nazi. It's true. I mean, that's just logic. That's simple, logical formulation. Robert equals Adolf. Great. Thanks, Edon Tess. Speech says, that's rich. Raskin wants to crucify every other J6 protester except for Epps. I'm curious to know if Raskin advocated so hard for any of the other protesters. I doubt that he has. The only guy caught on camera loudly pressuring protesters to infiltrate the Capitol is suddenly, quote, a poor guy. Suddenly, a quote, a poor guy. Yeah, he feels really bad for him. Ultra concerned. You leave him alone, you're running all your voters out of here. Maybe you should be nicer to Ray. He was screaming to break into the Capitol. They know exactly who he is. Three Girlies says, looks like Raskin is having a temper tantrum. Mary Trump is Donald Trump's niece. Her father died of alcoholism and is a major reason why Trump doesn't drink. Yeah, I know Trump doesn't drink. Trump not drinking is a inspirational thing for people. I think that some people can recognize that you don't have, there's not a lot of people who are like that. There's not a lot of people in the world who just don't drink openly publicly, right? And sort of say, I just don't drink alcohol. There's not a lot of them. Thunder 7 says, the crowd are lifting their arms to point their fingers to signify unity. They're doing the where we go one, we go all. Kash Patel signing his book now with that phrase. Trump dropping hints about Q. They hate anything they can't control. They can't stop the digital soldiers, says Thunder 7. I don't know what they're doing, but I certainly, know that raising your arms in the sky is not equivalent of being Adolf. And there was another story that we had talked about. I forget the specifics of it, but there was some other politician that was saying that people who were praying, raising their arms to pray, were, Hitlerian. Have you ever seen a Christian before? Or anything religious? Have you ever seen, anybody going to a rock concert and putting their hands up in the air? Not Hitler. All right. Here's another one from Emotional Old Cat Lady says, Obviously, Hillary has never been to a high school football game. Next time, Trump needs to pass out these. Not a salute. It's a cheer. Stupid people. We're number one. Yeah, it's like everybody puts their hands in the air. But Hillary's very, very, intentional with her speech. She's doing this for a reason. Is she going to run for president again? Are you kidding me? Is she going to try this again? Gosh, I think she might. Here, Gregory says, where is the Republican agenda to expand support for the houseboys for Marjorie Taylor Greene? I think that's probably not a thing I should have read. But Uncle Shane says, is it legal to citizens arrest politicians? Asking for my buddy. No, don't try it. Here's another one that came in from C. Reed. He said Zulu's comments came in about the Maserati. He says, I would just like to show people what this fleet looks like. You know the before photos for insurance company records. Oh, look at this. Beautiful. Look at this. The police. Oh my God. The BBS. The BBS is shining down on the Popo. And the BBS is big, beautiful spotlight, obviously. We got the Watching the Watchers sign on the background on the back of the police. Watching the Watchers, baby. That's right, Popo. That's not a Maserati, is it? Or is that a Maserati? No, that's not a Maserati. Well, thank you for that. I love that. So be careful, Popo. That came in from C. Reed. Says, I would just like to show the people what this fleet looks like, before the photos for the insurance company. Shout out to C. Reed. Thunder7 says, the entire world is taking a hard right turn towards nationalism and against the mass immigration, which has gone on for decades. Italy's Maloney, who won the election today, vowed to fight for country, family, for God, and secure borders. Sweden won a couple of weeks ago with an anti-immigrant party. Italy replaced the UN flag with the Italian one. Trump started this movement to put your own country first. America first, Sweden first, Italy first, and many more to follow. Soros and his little band of globalists can go pound sand. Yeah, they're probably unhappy with that today. You heard that woman from the EU. Uncle Shane says, I know this is a little bit off topic, but if you get a DUI in a federal vehicle, is that charged as just a normal DUI? Asking again for a buddy. So yes, if it's a federal vehicle on state land, it's going to very likely be in it'll be in the jurisdiction of a state court. Now, if you're in a federal vehicle on federal land, it's going to be charged as a federal DUI, which I have worked on. It doesn't happen often, but every now and then in Arizona, we get people who get charged with DUIs out at the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Canyon is a place where it's federal. It's federal lands. It's the national park. It's federal land. So those don't go into state courts. Those go over to the federal district court, and they process them as federal DUIs. It's a little bit strange to work on. And actually, the federal DUI laws are kind of harsher in some ways. At least the prosecutors that I've worked with were somewhat harsher than the state law, which is interesting because Arizona has very harsh DUI laws. But the prosecutor just wasn't happy with, I guess, the fact that this guy got a DUI. Actually, I've worked on 2 cases there, and they both are handled out of Flagstaff. Anyways, all right. Here, Thunder7 says, I love how the global ruling class is shocked when voters actually push back after having their freedoms, their savings, their businesses, their futures, and everything turn to crap. Good to see you, Thunder. Miguel says, de-inflation billions, votes billions, Psaki walking back on her party, priceless. De-inflation, billions. Votes, billions. Psaki walking back on her party, priceless. That's a good meme. All right, Troll Master says, I've come to realize the right-left thing isn't linear, it's circular. Once you go so far left, you hit the Hitler mark, you roll over to the hard right, apparently. And don't forget to check the Rumble rants. Oh yeah, the Rumble rants. See, the Rumble rants, the problem with the Rumble rants is they don't stick on top. Ah! That's one from John McGarvey that came in. Yeah, so I got to, if I miss them on Rumble, they don't pop up at the top. So I've got to scroll all the way back up to the top. But John McGarvey in the house with a very generous Eric's House dono over there. Here it is. Says, stop giving your money to people that hate you. Double XP. It's a good call. Yeah, not a good policy to give your money to people that hate you. Thank you, John McGarvey. Very generous of you, all going over to ericshouse.org. Here, Maloney, the female Trump, says Thunder7, says they called him the exact same derogatory names they're calling her. The swamp is terrified of nationalists because they're not part of the group thinking. Thank you for posting the video. I'll watch it later until YouTube takes it down. Hopefully they won't. Here, this one came in from Tree Mendes. Tree Mendes says, I'm tired of KJP's narrative about Biden putting forth funding for the police and Republicans voting against it. Why do some of the cities need funding? Oh, that's right, because those cities chose to defund the police. Many cities have plenty of funding, but are still short-staffed. Why? Oh, that's right, because the Democrats told them that they are all evil racists and that they've seen other cops be over-prosecuted or falsely prosecuted over shooting a person involved who's a person of color. Or maybe it's because they were told that even though they managed to continue their duties before there was a vax, they could not continue those duties if they decided they didn't want it. Or maybe it's because they're tired of arresting a suspect for a violent crime, then the suspect is out on the street days later and either under-prosecuted or not prosecuted at all. Tremendous says, I don't want to see the pendulum swing back to the point that people are over-penalized for minor offenses, but without looking at some of these other issues, it's just throwing money at the problem that will do very little to solve it. Great comment from Tremendous. Yeah, the pendulum swings back and forth. It goes from defund the police to encouraging, let's say, rampant criminality, releasing everybody with no cash bail, to what's going to happen is there's going to be a reaction. People are going to respond and say, enough of this. And we're going to go back just like it was in the 80s and 90s, where we say 3 strikes laws, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You go to prison if you do anything. And it's going to be a horrific thing because that causes hardship. But the people who write the laws, they play by a different set of rules. It's all of the other people, the little people like you and me, who have to suffer under their tyranny. Emotional Old Cat Lady says, the American people are awaking for sure, and for the time being, have once again become the silent majority. I agree with you, Emotional. There's a lot of optimism out there. Here, this one came in from Edon Tess, says, Ursula von der Leyen says, this is the way. From The Mandalorian. Yeah, right. You either sort of abide or you're done. Rai T says, thank God the UK left the EU. Undemocratic. Ursula wasn't elected by any member of the European public, and the Europeans have zero method of removing her. I didn't even know that. As a Brit who is very interested in Brexit, I can tell you confidently that the EU is one of the most undemocratic, dangerous organizations in the world. Other countries voted against the EU in referenda before the UK did, and the EU had them rerun referenda until it went how the EU wanted. Ireland voted 3 times until the EU got the result they wanted. They tried their hardest to prevent the UK from following through on the democratic will of the people. They still try their hardest today to limit the UK for daring to leave their precious union. I hope and believe that the EU will eventually disintegrate, as it's already a failing institution. I think it probably will. You know, the sort of communal, the great communal national unifying experiment, I don't think is working out all that well. Aggie Martin says, I'm really not interested in what the EU tools think. I'm pretty sure the Italians don't either. That doesn't sound like it. They don't care at all. They voted the way they voted, and good for them. Rai T says, have a look at the recent election results in Sweden, too. It swung right from the left, and no wonder when you look into the disaster that open-door immigration has brought onto that country. Yeah, people are going to get tired of it. Here says a tip for Eric's house because YouTube is evil. Well, thank you for Facts Matter. And I saw some of those come in over on the locals chat. And I'm going to get to those here very soon. Thank you very much, Facts Matter. Another one came in from FedCure, says, Rob, having gone through a federal criminal trial and being prosecuted under Classified Act, the special master appointment in Trump is missing a CIPA court-appointed security officer that's been appointed in every other case. That this case isn't proceeding under CIPA is telling. The whole thing is a charade. The government is bailing, knowing it had a Judas's goat on the 7th floor whispering sweet nothings into the ear of senior officials who bought in hook, line, and sinker given the go-ahead for the Trump raid. They're paddling and bailing a sinking ship, waiting for the captain's order to abandon ship, still not knowing that the captain has left them to drown, like they're on a sinking ship. Sit back and enjoy the show as the Unselect Committee is feverishly tearing through the Mar-a-Lago documents, trying to connect the thousands of dots before the one final hearing before Election Day. Remember, the closer we get to the midterms, the crazier the commie lefts will get. They're desperate. Expect anything. They know how well they do things. He says, we're in the majority. Overwhelm the ballots with a red tsunami. God bless America. Over from FedCure. Check out fedcure.org. Very good comment, FedCure. And I agree with you on a lot of that. Now, I'm not as familiar with all the details on SIPA and all of that, but yeah, they really sort of feel like there feels like there's a scramble in the air to some degree. For the YouTube chat, here is the color chartreuse. Chartreuse, watching the watchers. Oh, hey, that's Paul Minot. And I forgot to mention Paul Minot. Oh, I forgot to cue it up today. Paul Minot had a 10 out of 10 big, beautiful spotlight that he posted when he was behind a keyboard out there. And I didn't know that he was a musically talented individual, but he is. And he's also an astute observer of colors, including chartreuse, which I think this is about as close as I can get. I mean, this is kind of a chartreuse. Like, this is my official chartreuse. It doesn't look like that, but this is about as close as we can get at the time being. This is what it is. So thank you, Paul Mino. All right, we're doing a refresh over here on Locals and another one over on YouTube to see if there was anything more that I missed. Before we wrap it up for the day, my friends. Man, today's show went by pretty quick. It's all 6 o'clock. All right, so let's see what else is over here. Former LEO says, when I worked for the feds, I got a speeding ticket in my vehicle on Fed property, and I had to appear before a U.S. magistrate. Yeah, they do speeding tickets there, too. It's true. Yeah, I've also we don't really typically represent people for federal speeding tickets. We just say, look, just do driving school or pay it. But yeah, they also get prosecuted out of the district court there at the Grand Canyon. Speech says, I do not place political signs, especially Trump, on my lawn because I can't afford to have my windows broken or my tires slashed. That's another good point, Speech. Yeah, you might be labeled a domestic terrorist or a MAGA extremist. You know, it just, is it worth it? It's others have pointed out, why would you even acknowledge you're a Republican in any polls if you are a person who cares about your well-being and not being labeled a terrorist? Former LEO says, I'll try a second time since you skipped over the original. Bill Clinton never chose Hillary for any purpose ever. Did I miss a whole page again? Did I miss a whole stinking page? Hopefully I didn't. Okay, we're double checking all the pages here. I don't think I missed a page. So former LEO, I don't know how I missed you on that one, but I apologize. And I think that is it, my friends. I think that's it from former LEO. He says, when I worked for the feds, I got a speeding ticket in my vehicle. I had to appear before a magistrate. Yeah, I think we about covered all of the ground, and I'm checking in over on YouTube, and I think we're up to speed there. And so that, my friends, is it for us for the day. Oh my goodness. We're going to leave it right there. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show, everybody chatting away over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank yous go out to some of the tips that came in. Let's take a look at these here. Shifra Lynn sent in a tip, says, love your show. Thank you, Shifra. I appreciate you. Here's another one that came in from Phil in Flyover. He says, Phil and Flyover, all this is going over to Eric's house. Thank you, Phil and Flyover. JC says, sorry, man, I'm too tired to comment today. It's all right, JC. I read your chat on the air, so it's okay. We've got you covered over here. Shout out to John McGarvey, to Suzanne H777, JC the Music Man, Jason on Blast, C. Reed, others chatting away, talking about open borders and others. And I appreciate all of you over there. Thank you to my friends over on the Rumble Rant section, the Rumble chat. We've also got some good activity over there. Love this. We have Eric Scorpio, member of the public, Ran233, Zillow won the pillow, along with Cat Crap Fever. Anything is in the house. Martin2308 is over there as well. Fairy Dance and others chatting away on Rumble. Thank you very much for joining us over there. You can also join and support the show, get access to those morning walk and talks, and sort of carry on the conversation after the show ends by joining at watchingthewatchers.locals.com or here on YouTube, clicking that join button. right next to the subscribe button, right next to the like button, and you get access to those gifts. I am also a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we have an amazing team of people all day focused on helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. We offer free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. You can schedule online at rrlawaz.com, where you can just book an appointment right there on the internet. Very quick, very easy. And also, if you want to support ericshouse.org, it's an amazing organization that helps people who have lost somebody to suicide, overdose, or tragic death. Over at ericshouse.org, a link to my donation page, if you want to support my fundraising efforts, is available down in the description. And I'm very appreciative of your support of Eric's House. We have our annual fundraising, and so, of course, that's coming up in October. Thank you to the mods who mod down the fort. Big shout outs to Vientikiss, who I think is on game night tonight. K-Bean, Just Cause, Lean, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole. Zulu was very generous today. Thank you, Zulu and K-Bean. Gio's always in the house or stops by. We've got Henry Dixon. Thank you to our Spotlight supporters, Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB, along with John over at qsimple.com. And so check them out. We like to share some screen real estate because they support the show with a little bit of extra monetary love over there. But that, my friends, is it for the show. Final goodbyes out to Facts Matter, Curtis Bartle, shout outs to Richard Jack, Road Trek Girl, my friends also on YouTube, Vijaya's in the house, shout out to Katrinka, Spidey Fan, Rebecca Caraway, C. Reed's over there, and Lean, of course. Zach Nichols says, Rob, are you going to match tonight or all week? All week. I'm going to match it from now until October. Yeah, from now until October 8th, I'm going to match it. I don't know what that's going to look like up until a certain limit. I don't think it's going to hit the limit, but if it does, I have to have a limit. But yes, it's going to be a lot of fun, and then I'm going to be emceeing that along with some other people. Sort of, I'm not going to do it on this channel like we did last year, but yeah, that's October 8th, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But that, my friends, is it for the show for the day. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the broadcast. We are going to be back here again tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you right here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.